Welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast, where empathy meets action in the world of leadership. Your host, Gino Degregori, engages with innovators and seasoned professionals from diverse sectors, all demonstrating the power of leading with kindness. And now, your host, Gino Degregori.
Today's guest believes that kindness isn't soft, it's strategic. If you ever struggle to give feedback without conflict or build a culture of care without compromising performance, this episode is for you. I'm Gino Degregori and welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast. Our guest today, Tim Keogh, is the founder of A Kind Life and host of the Kinder Conversation podcast with over 15 years of experience helping more than 100,000 staff across 75 organizations. Tim leads culture change through evidence-based kindness. He's also the best-selling author of The Kinder Conversations and a powerful advocate for neurodivergence leadership and inclusive workplace. Why does this conversation matter for people out there? Tim brings proven tools like the BUILD model and lived experience as a neurodivergent leader, offering practical ways leaders can embed kindness without losing clarity and accountability. Tim, welcome to the show here. I appreciate you joining us. If you don't mind kind of sharing the background and your journey here with us.
Thank you, Gina. Well, thank you. It's great to be here. The background and my journey of being here. I feel that those of us who work in self-development do the work we need ourselves. And my journey in kindness started probably 20 years ago, realizing I needed more in my world. I needed more of it from me to others. I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years. I haven't had a boss in all that time. I feel I'm unemployable, or rather, certainly, I don't think I'd be very easy for someone to manage me, but we'll come back to that later when we talk about neurodiversity. Yeah, we do the work we need ourselves. I need more kindness in my life. And as I sought that out, as I read books, as I listened to podcasts, I developed work that I felt would be helpful for other people. I started to spread it around. A business came from that. And here we are 15 years later with A Kind Life. We're a small business, there's 15 of us. Our mission is to create kinder culture at pace and at scale because kindness can't wait. People think that culture change is like changing a supertanker. It takes years to... And it just doesn't work that way. The only way to change culture is at pace and at scale. Is that enough? Is that
Absolutely.
Start?
Yeah, no, thank you for joining. I was really excited to have you on the podcast because it resonates well with the title, not only the title, but the work that you're doing, right? For me, it's all about kind of sharing to the world about being kind and leading with kindness. And that can be in anywhere, not just an organization or a business, but in your life and with your friends and family too, right? So in everything that you do. So before we get into the weeds of the conversation, the first question that I love asking our guests is, what does being a kind leader mean to you?
Yeah. What does a kind leader mean to me? So I think that there are two aspects to this. And then there's a cycle. And the two aspects are kindness to ourselves and kindness to others. So the kind leader, we hear from Simon Sinek that, that leaders eat last and this kind of stuff. And I'm not sure I agree with all of that. I think that what kind leaders do is they're kind to themselves. And if they're kind to themselves, it means that they can then be kind to others. They look after themselves, they can look after others. They support themselves, they can support others, and they challenge themselves, they can challenge others. So it's internal as well as external. I think that's really important. And people talk about kindness as being like just what we do. Mm-hmm. Once a year on the internet, there's Random Acts of Kindness Day. And it makes me a little bit mad because on the one hand, why do we only get a day when the evidence shows that kindness is so important all of the time? But then the other thing is that kindness is not random. Yeah, kindness is super intentional and it's not acts. It's not just what we do. Then we kind of start to explore this conversation, start to unpick kindness. Kindness is what we see, what we notice. Is going on for others. Yeah. It's what we think and feel. It's compassion. Yeah, it's empathy for others and for ourselves. It's what we say. It's the words we choose to use, the way we choose to express ourselves. Our language is so powerful. There may be Harry Potter fans listening to your podcast, and J.K. Rowling, who wrote Harry Potter, once said, words are our most powerful magic. Yeah. It's absolutely true. The words that we choose to use are so important. And it's what we do as well. So a kind leader is one who can notice what is happening for themselves and other people, is one who can step into others' worlds and their own world with compassion and empathy and start to work out what's actually going on, is one who can choose the words that are supportive, that are compassionate, that drive change, that push people forward, that build optimism and hope and energy, and is one who can then act in such a way that it builds people up rather than knocking people down. And just one other thing to touch on, which I think is really important. You said, kindness is not just soft, it's strategic.
Right.
People often mistake kind with being nice.
Yep.
Yeah. Kind and nice are two very, very different things. Nice means not rocking the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice means being genial with people. Yeah. Right. Not putting yourself out and not putting other people out. As a leader, you can't afford to do that.
Yeah.
Kindness is strategic, but it's also hard-edged. We'll get onto this when we start to talk about kind of conversations, when we start to talk about giving feedback. If someone does something that is not working in terms of performance or inclusion or in terms of the way that they're building relationships with others in your organization, the kindest thing to do is to tell them, to speak up, to have the conversation. Performance management is a kind act. Yep. So the kind leader does all of this. They think about themselves, they think about others, they think about what they see, say, think, and do. But they have the important conversations where they need to have them. They don't hold back.
Yeah, beautiful. Well said, Kim. I mean, I love the background. I mean, I'm sorry, not background. Your definition of kind leader and how you see it from your perspective with your experience. And I agree 100% in everything you said. I mean, a lot of it starts with yourself. And it took me a while, right? I've always been, quote unquote, a nice person. Let's put it there, a nice person. And growing up as a leader, when I started the companies and other companies, it's like I always trusted people. I trust first, always, because I felt like, there's the best interest to work with me. And sometimes I got burned and I learned, right? So I learned from those mistakes as it relates to how to navigate that. But at the end of the day, around kind of like the pandemic time, I needed to go within. Am I nice to myself, or am I too hard with myself to be able to then give to others, right? And I agree 100%. It needs to be, you got to start with yourself. You have to self-reflect. The words that you said about the words are powerful. The words are very, very powerful when you're talking to yourself as well, right? How you talk to yourself and what do you say to yourself? Are you good enough? Are you all those different things, right? So those things really matter, right? To when we're doing all.
Yeah, but I talk to people when we're running our training sessions. I ask people, "Have you got a voice in your head? Mm-hmm. You got a voice in your head?" And people go, "Yeah, I have a voice in my head." Is it kind? Mm-hmm. Is it kind to you? Would you be happy for others to talk to you, or would you be happy to see people talk to each other in the way that you talk to yourself? Because what I've learned, a huge journey of self-discovery, a huge journey of therapy, because I wasn't so kind to myself, nor so kind to others, I don't think. Although, I meet up with people from years ago and they say, I remember you being kind, and maybe I'd do myself down, but I'm not sure I was kind to myself. That voice is often not your own voice. It's often people who you met who were important to you when you were young. And then you're just repeating the narratives. You're just repeating the patterns that they said to you. Sometimes it takes a bit of therapy to unpick that stuff. Yeah. But yeah, the voice in your head is an incredibly powerful driver or barrier.
Yeah, absolutely. And it starts, I mean, I don't know how far you remember, but I have a 12-year-old. He's my youngest, my third kid. And He's a little bit anxious, right? Not a little. He's really is always trying to figure out and everything. And I always try to ask him, like, how do you talk to yourself? He's like, what do you mean? He's 12 years old. He doesn't understand this stuff, right? But I'm trying to work with him because, it doesn't matter how, if you don't start, it doesn't matter at any age, right? And being able to understand and become that, because I know he's hard on himself. Yeah. I know he is. He wants everything to be perfect. And if it's not perfect, he's not good enough. And the minute he's not good enough, then the emotion starts kind of going into the wrong direction. And then either he gives up or he blows up, right? And I see that in bringing it back to the business world. I see that sometimes not as emotional because, kids are a little bit different, right? But in the real world, right, you're seeing some of that with our people too. And how do you navigate that as well?
Yeah, no, you are seeing it. And, in some sectors more than others, and some people do blow up, emotionally. They feel it's perfectly reasonable to blow up emotionally. And yet what we're dealing with is people who are in effect talking to themselves as 3-year-olds. Yeah. And we're all doing that. And I feel that, just acknowledging that and knowing, just having some compassion for that can be really, really helpful, because you don't want your people to give up or blow up. Yeah. You want your people to keep trying different things. It's really, really important. It's really important.
Yeah, and it's one of the things. As we're going to your model and the business that you're running, what are some of the models? There's one particular model that you mentioned, build, I believe, right? So I would love for you to explain it a little more for the audience here to understand what is it and how do you potentially implement it in an organization, and how does it go as part of a journey in an organization as well?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad you asked that. It's absolutely at the core of our work. There's a kind of a smaller version of it, which is even more important, which I'll come to at the end, called the ABC. But so for us to be able to operate in the world of business, whatever business you're in, we need to be able to have conversations. We need to be able to talk things out when we disagree. Mm-hmm. When we've got different perspectives, over performance, over the way we're following procedures, over behaviors, over attitudes, the way people are showing up, we've got to be able to talk about it. Because if we don't say anything, nothing's going to change. Right. Silence changes nothing. And in fact, what it probably does is it reinforces, because for many people, silence means you actually agree with what they're doing. Well, they didn't say anything, which means they're happy with it. You're not just, you've not noticed, but you're actively happy with it. But I think what's really important to remember is to feel safe to speak up, people need to know how to speak up. Mm-hmm. And we're never taught it. All we're ever taught, particularly if you as kids, in a playground, as students, and if you watch TV, movies, watch media these days, right, you never see people disagreeing agreeably. Yeah. Yeah. You only ever see people taking umbrage at what somebody else has done and then having a row. It's like the normal way of doing things. And of course, on media, it's a normal way of doing things because, disagreeing agreeably doesn't make for great television, but disagreeing disagreeably doesn't make for great relationships at work or at home. So, it's about 15 years ago, I started to realize this. And as I said, we do the work we need ourselves. I realized that in my own personal relationships, I was finding it really difficult to say the things I needed to say. I needed to find a method for being able to do it. And so what I did was my classic, which is I looked at every single feedback model out there. Every single one. And there'll be famous ones that people know, the books people have read. I saw public speakers speak about it, all the famous people that you've heard of, and lots you've not. And I read all the books about nonviolent communication. Did you know there's a feedback model called fear?
No.
Fear. Well, I mean, we said words are important.
Yeah.
The minute I've got a model called fear,
oh man,
that unconsciously that comes in, fight or flight. There's no way I'm going to give feedback. So the reason we call this build is because it's about building people up. Yeah, it's about building trust. It's about building relationships. It's constructive. It's a constructive conversation. It's a dialogue. And the BUILD, because that's how we spell build, basically each one stands for a step in the process. It stands for a word, but it also stands for one of the principles of having great conversations. So it stands for behavior, understand, impact, listen, do differently. Okay. And in a nutshell, what that means is the first thing we do when we're opening up one of these conversations is we've got to get past our judgments and the personality traits, and you were horrible to me, and that's a dreadful thing to do, and you're such a blah 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 person, or you're this, you're that, you're the other. In fact, we get past any phrase that has you are at the beginning of it, because when you start a conversation with you are, then a disagreement's going to happen. They're going to disagree. You are mean, you're uncivil, you're rude, you're horrible, you're thoughtless. They're going to disagree, and you're going to argue. Okay, so what you want is you did. I noticed when you did this. I noticed when you said that. That was the behavior that you exhibited. And what it does is it puts you really clearly on the track of, this is the thing that we need to talk about. And it starts you from a point of agreement. We got to you said these words. You said to me, oh, it's just banter. Don't be so sensitive. And I'll say to you, you just said it's just banter. Don't be so sensitive. I did. So we start with agreement. When you start with a point of agreement, the emotions come down. You've got some hope. Anyone who's ever worked in mediation knows, try and find a point of agreement. Okay. Now, the understand, the you, could actually go anywhere. It could go at the beginning. But then it would spell you build and it wouldn't mean anything. Okay. So I put it there. And basically, that's the bit where you silently just step into the shoes of the person you're giving some feedback to and okay, what might have been going on for them? Understand their position with a little bit of compassion. You'd probably be wrong. Maybe they got out of the wrong side of bed this morning. Maybe they've had an argument with their partner. Maybe they got a health scare. What's the most benevolent explanation you can find for the thing for their behavior? Maybe I haven't explained it clearly enough to them already, whatever. Don't tell them because you'll be wrong. Right. Just in your own mind, what it does is it just settles you down. It changes your tone of voice. So you tell them the behavior. You start to build a bit of empathy with the understand. And then you tell them the impact it had. You did this, the impact on this was me. So you've just said, oh, it was only banter. Don't be so sensitive. And I'm going to say, and the impact on me is, it makes you feel you don't see how hurtful I find this kind of conversation.
Right.
Yeah. And then I'll just listen and I'll say, so what was happening for you? And listen. Yeah. And I will never ask why. You see why in a lot of movies. Why did you do that? Why did you do this? I once saw a mother, the child had just a beautiful ice cream. Oh, it was piled up on the cornet, and the child tripped over and dropped the ice cream on the floor and started bursting into tears. And the parent said, "Why did you do that?" It's like, oh, I don't know. Right. So people never know why they do things. That's a question between a person and their maker. It really is. Yeah. What was happening? What was your perspective? It's a what question, and then you listen. Don't say yes or no. Just listen. Don't agree or disagree. Just listen. Yeah. Don't even make faces. Just listen. When you can say, okay, I hear you. We might have different perspectives. You don't have to agree. Okay. You've said your position. They've said their position. And then we go, okay, so what can we do differently? What needs to be different here? That's the D. It's resolution. It's restorative. What can we do differently to move on? So that's build. It's a simple structure. And the principles underpin that. Under the B, there's the principle of the behavior of non-judgment. Under the U, there's a principle of compassion, that's understand. Under the I, there's a principle of actually giving the gift of self-awareness. We'll come back to this, but people are not normally aware of how they're coming across to other people. So you're given a gift, it's self-awareness. You never knew you had this input. I mean, you probably wouldn't want to. The L is about dialogue. You've got to listen. And studies show when you listen to someone, really, really listen, give someone a really good listening to, with empathy, they're more likely to see both sides of the story. They're more likely to see their weaknesses as well as their strengths. They're more likely to come up with solutions, when you just listen. Actually, saying nothing is better than talking in these situations. And then the D, the do differently, is about restorative. It's about forgetting what happened in the past and working on what will happen in the future. So that's the build model. And like I say, it's the underpinning of my book, Kind of Conversations. We've taught that to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people all the way around the world in all different kinds of sectors. And my idea was just to capture all the practical, helpful stuff for people to kind of get out of a lot of this space. There's a lot of posturing and positioning and trying to make a brand out of it and so on. And for me, I just want to make it easy, practical for people.
It definitely sounds. Thank you, Tim, for kind of sharing that. And I was holding back because I had a bunch of questions along, but I really wanted you to finish the thought there for our audience to understand the process. But instead of asking specific questions, what do you think about me giving you a scenario right now? I just thought of it, right, as that we can kind of walk through real quick, right? We don't have to go into too much depth, right? So
fun. Great fun.
I'm thinking, let's pretend I'm the leader. You're part of my executive leadership team, right? And one of the things that I've noticed is I feel like I haven't trained you enough with some of the things that I'm expecting you to do. And you are going on your own way, executing, thinking that you are doing the things, but you are not as proactive. And you are more of a, let me use these words, right, from my perspective, order taker rather than a driver. And at the leadership level, you need to be more than that, right? So how can I follow this model and be able to, instead of say, why aren't you doing this? Or why aren't you taking more charge? Or those conversations and bring it down to, and this is not a real life, this is just made up, by the way. And starting with the behavior, right? How would you? How can we have that conversation?
I mean, because it's quite a vague. It's a kind of vague position because what we don't understand are the things that have actually happened. But we can make some of those things up, right?
Yeah.
So we could say, since you joined the leadership team 3 months ago, I've seen some really great execution of the ideas that I've given you. Yeah. What I've not seen so much on new ideas of your own to drive our agenda forward. Okay, so that's the build. It's practical, it's clear. Understand. Maybe they're worried that that you're gonna squash their ideas. Maybe they work with the boss that always squashed their ideas. Maybe they've heard that you're the kind of boss who squashes ideas. It could be a whole range of different things. Maybe they're trying to learn for the first 3 months about what, before they come forward. They're shaping lots of ideas already. We don't know. But all of a sudden I'm thinking, I'm feeling a little bit more warm towards them around this. So the impact on me. Yeah, so go ahead.
Sorry, one question on the understand. So are these self-reflecting questions that me as the leader asking myself?
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So these are self-reflecting questions you're asking yourself. You are not, the you is unsaid. There's another you. It's unsaid. It's silent. Yes. Just in your own minds to kind of warm yourself towards the other individual in some way, just to lower your sense of, I say, to kind of puncture your bubble of self-righteous indignation a little bit. It's a really important clarification. Yeah, it's unsaid. And then the impact bit. So what's the impact? What is the impact on you as a leader? Perhaps you're feeling the pressure to come up with the ideas when actually you'd hired them because you'd heard they were really good at them, and that's causing pressure for you. Or I feel as a leader that I'm not getting everything I can out of you. That you're able to deliver.
Right.
What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, no, I think that's...
And then you listen.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach, because allowing them to express themselves, right? Like, you're not interrogating them or pushing them in a negative way. It's more like, here's what we're seeing, right? Here's my understanding, but, what are your thoughts, right?
Yeah.
And then listen, right?
And then listen, and then listen, and listen, and listen some more. There was a study, it's really interesting. People who you should expect should be able to really listen well are family doctors, right? Because That's when someone comes in when they're struggling, when they've got a concern, they're ill, they're worried, and so on. They've got all this going on in their background, their history.
Yeah.
And so there's a study of family doctors in the US that showed that when they ask someone to describe their problem and their history and what they were worried about and how they were presenting, those doctors overestimate the amount of time they spend listening by 700%. 700%. They think they were listening for 7 minutes. They were just listening for 1. Yeah. And actually, as leaders, we do the same thing because we expect people they want to listen to us. We overestimate the amount of time we spend listening, but listening is incredibly powerful. You'll find new stuff you didn't know.
And I had another gentleman, he's from Australia, that I had in the show, and he was listening was all what he talked about, right? We're not a really good listeners because we're constantly, now with all these different notifications and things popping up, right? We lose focus, right? And we start going in different directions.
When you interrupt yourself just to check your email, this is why I don't think anybody ever is fully focused anymore. No one's ever really fully in flow anymore, really focused, productively focused. It can take up to 25 minutes to get back up to the level of focus you were in beforehand. If you were in full focus, 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Just when you're driving, this is why it's really important. This is public safety message, kids. Okay, nothing to do with these. Your public safety message. If you touch your phone when you are driving, you will reduce cognitive degradation by as much as being 3 times over the limit of alcohol. Legal alcohol. 3 times. That's how little concentration you got. That's your cognitive degradation. So if you're doing that while you're trying to have a conversation with someone, while you're trying to focus on work, where you're trying to develop a new idea or shape a new approach to a market or something, or interrogate your numbers, you'll never get there.
Right.
I call mobile phones the thief of now. I have no notifications. I don't do any social media except for LinkedIn because and I have no notifications, no email, no text, no nothing, no notifications at all. And I will choose when I go and have a look.
Yeah. And then you control, right? You're in control at that point.
It's a new thing for me. It's about a year old. What a difference in self-care.
Nice.
and in performance.
I haven't done it. I think I'm gonna start doing. This is the second time I'm really hearing from my guests here, so I may have to start doing some of that. So that's good. But coming back on the build, I thank you very much for walking through the scenario. The other question that I had was, how do we go about implementing something? Not necessarily the build, but let's talk about kind mindset, right, in an organization and culture. How have you seen it done successfully, right? And I know it takes time, right? But what are some of the maybe top 3 things that you would recommend?
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to answer a slightly different question first, and then I'll answer that question because it's really, really important. There are 2 kinds of feedback that are essential in building a kinder organization. The first is build feedback so that everybody in the organization, not just leaders, but everybody in the organization feels safe and confident to be able to talk stuff out when they need to talk stuff out. I can do this with my leader can do it with me, we can do it with peers and colleagues, and on the shop floor, in the factory, wherever it is, we can all give feedback. That's really vital. But there's another kind of feedback which is even more important, which is appreciative feedback. So study after study shows successful organizations and work relationships and home relationships as well, because there's a study of divorce that showed this and a study of newlyweds after 6 months. The only ones who are in a satisfactory relationship experience 5 times as much appreciative feedback as critical feedback. And it's the same all the way across our business world as well. So people need to know how to give genuine praise, not just, oh, you're fab, wonderful, you're such a kind person, because it's vague and patronizing.
Right.
We call it the ABC of appreciation. It's like the build, but shorter. Tell them the action that they took, the benefit that it had, and ask them to continue doing it.
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
So really, really, you can do that 100 times. It's never a day. It's never patronizing. It builds confidence and it builds repetition because people are more likely to do it again, which means that it amplifies kindness. So underpinning however you see kindness in an organization, however it works strategically, whichever one of those levers of seeing and thinking and saying and doing that are going to work for you in your organization, and they're different in different organizations.
Right.
You've got to have this feedback engine underneath where you've got appreciation to amplify the behaviors you want more of, and some form of speaking up mechanism, build, or whatever it's going to be, to talk about the things you don't want to see. That engine is the engine that drives change. Because what often people will say, and in getting to now, Gino, answer your actual question,
of course.
When people think about, well, we need to create a kind of culture, what they'll do is they'll engage with their people. They'll say, what does it look like when we work well together? We ask questions. What does a good day at work look like? What does a bad day at work look like?
Right.
Yeah. And 90% of that is to do with the way people behave with each other. What behaviors do you want to see more of? What do you want to see less of? Which of those are going to strategically drive us towards the outcomes that we want to deliver as an organization? And they'll be different. Some organizations, teamwork's more important. Some it's less important. In some organizations, innovation's more important. In some it's less important. And there are kind acts that drive those things. You can see the way that different elements of kindness drive the strategic outcomes we're looking for. That's why I say it's strategic. So you engage with everybody in the organization to ask them, what does it look like when we're really humming here? What does it look like when we're really, really delivering and you're loving it? Right. What does that look like? And what does it look like when that's not happening? Because that builds motivation to change. And let's shape that together. Let's distill that into not just a set of values, but the behaviors we want to see more of and less of, the things that tangibly make a difference.
Right.
Then you've got your ABCs and your builds for people to talk about those every single day. But I think what we found, and that can be enough, but I think what we found really accelerates this is then to really skill leaders up with emotional intelligence, practical emotional intelligence, the insight to be able to notice what works for me and what works for others and what isn't, the insight to be able to understand my impact on others. Just have some self-awareness and the behavioral flexibility to be able to change stuff, to be able to do things differently, to get different results. You cannot just exhort people to be kinder. You need motivation. That means involvement.
Right.
Yeah. They need skills. That means things like ABC and build.
Right.
Yeah. And they need self-awareness. And really, if as a leaders, that's absolutely vital.
No, that's beautiful, and thank you for that. And not to summarize it, but just from my perspective as I'm listening is, having the feedback mechanism is really important, right? And because if you don't know what your people are doing or feeling or experiencing, you're not going to be able to take your company to the next level. Or, even if you don't run a company, even if you run a department or a team, right? You need to have that feedback mechanism back and then take actions too, right?
Exactly. And that's not just feedback as in, a daily, weekly or monthly or annual survey. That's people talking to each other directly in real time about the stuff that isn't working for them.
Right.
Yeah. Taking out the technology and just having, that's person to person conversation.
Yes. And then skilling the people with the emotional intelligence, as you were saying, is very important. How do you train to become? So we are a consulting firm, right? So we do a lot of technology, Microsoft technologies, but as part of our training, we also put in there some of the basic emotional intelligence in there to understand how do you treat others? How do you work with? How do you understand what to say, when to say, and those kinds of things that are important to build that up, right? And then the last thing I want to share from what I'm hearing from you is, I would imagine that you need to have leadership buy-in, right? In every organization that you work with, you need to make sure that it's coming from the top, right? And it's being bought in and being not only just bought into, hey, get everybody to do it, they have to do it as well.
Yeah, and they not only have to do it, they have to demonstrate that they not only, it can't be like, oh, I'm wonderful, be like me.
Yeah.
Yeah. What we've seen is at a deep psychological level and at a kind of a neuroscience level, a level of the brain, behaviors are contagious. Yeah. So if you want someone to be appreciative, you need to be appreciative. If you want someone to listen, you need to listen, and so on and so forth. But what's really important is if you want someone to change behavior, which is what growing a kinder culture is all about. And we know that kinder cultures, we haven't touched the evidence here, but kinder cultures are more productive, they're more profitable, they're more innovative, or they're more engaged, all the metrics you want. Kindness drives those things. If you want people to change behavior, you need to change behavior. So the leaders need to be proactively and visibly doing something different to demonstrate that they understand that by behaving in a kinder way, it's going to deliver them results, because that gives space for other people to change.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you're perfect, there's no space for me to change either. So
Yes.
you've got to role model change,
Right.
as well as role modeling, what you're already doing perfectly.
Absolutely. I love that. So I know we're having great conversations. One thing that I am actually doing new, as I share with you on this episode, is flip the mic. And what I mean by that, I'm allowing my guests to ask me a question. So is there a particular question as as it relates to kindness, leadership, or anything else? What would it be?
Yeah. So I'm really interested, Gino, in kindness in tech.
Yeah.
Because, we've seen some of the stories, Uber and others, and Amazon, where we kind of get a sense that it's kind of lacking in tech. What's been your experience of kindness in the tech world?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's in the tech world, the zeros and ones. It's so on or off, right? It's just black and white, and it's just there's no room for from at least from a technical high level perspective, room for errors, right? Especially if you're delivering solutions and capabilities to your customers, you got to be on. You got to push forward, like to support the mission and the capability. So a lot of that emotional intel, a lot of those the behavior, if we use that word, right? It's all focused towards the mission, the profitability, right? If we start tweaking some of that stuff, it's like, and you shift it to more for the way I'm looking at it in my organization, into impact. How are we impacting our customers, and through what? And like, what are the mechanisms that we are impacting our customers? It's not just technology. It's also the way people interact with each other, the experiences that they're going through as a customer interacting with a Bravo consultant, right? How does that? So if you marry that with technology and how we deliver, now it creates a memorable experience to our customers and how we can take that to the next level. Yeah. And if we're all humans at the end of the day, anybody can deliver technology, Tim. Anybody.
Yeah. So that's a trainable skill, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a trainable skill.
And the way we behave, the experience we create for people.
Yeah.
Yeah, is a human experience.
And that's what we're missing. And that's why I'm really focusing personally and with my team to make it about experience. I don't know if you've ever been to Disney World. You walk in and you already know they have the smell, they have the visual, they have the just everything moving around, and you're in a magical place already, that you're going to have fun. It's going to be expensive, but you're going to have fun, right? So that is what I'm looking for, right? I'm trying to create a consulting business with my customers that they feel they experience. And the only way to do that is you have highly emotional, intelligent individuals that are leading with kindness, with empathy, and they're bringing great value to our customers.
It's really, really interesting to hear that. And you remind me of something that I learned a long time ago. There's a book that I read that got me into this world in healthcare. And now we work in lots of sectors. It was called If Disney Ran Your Hospital, 9.5 Things You Would Do Differently. And there's one thing I learned about Disney, and this may not be the case anymore, but basically at some point they had 4 values, but these values were in order. And the values were safety, guest, show, efficiency. But in that order, where safety comes before guest, comes before show, comes before efficiency. And it was a great example of this, which would be interesting to hear, just think about how you can apply this in the world of tech or others. And maybe this is for another conversation, maybe for listeners to give us some feedback on. So you're at a queue, you're at a line, and you're checking line efficiency. You've got a clipboard or something and you're checking line efficiency, and you see some litter blowing across the park. Well, show is more important than efficiency. So you'll put your clipboard away, you'll run after the litter. Just before you catch the litter, a guest says, "Excuse me, can you tell me where I can find the ice cream stall?"
Right.
And you forget the litter and you talk to the guest. Okay. And
Yep.
you say, well, the ice cream's, it's just over. You just go into and just as you're doing that, you see a child climbing a fence.
Oh, yeah.
You say, excuse me. And you run it. You get because safety trumps everything. You get the child down off the fence, make sure they're safe, their family are around and everything's fine. You then go, that's safety. You then go back, and if the guest's still there and they haven't found the ice cream stall, you'll show them the ice cream stall. Then you'll go back and you'll chase after the litter. And then you'll go back to your clipboard and the efficiency. So having the values in that like really clear order, I think is really, really, really powerful. That, you know, and that's a wonderful experience in a kind organization. So
no, that's great. That's a great example. And thank you for kind of bringing it back with that experience. But rapid fire questions that I have for you. One book every leader should read.
Well, I should say Kind of Conversations by Tim Keogh, shouldn't I? But I'm not going to. Love 2.0 by Barbara Fredrickson.
Love 2.0?
Yeah, by Barbara Fredrickson. Positive psychology book.
Perfect. Favorite quote or mantra?
Well, this is just for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only good place to be in the drama triangle is outside the triangle.
Oh, nice. There you go. Don't want to be in there. If you could have coffee with anyone, past or present, who would it be and why?
Oh, that's amazing. Barack Obama.
Okay. That's a great conversation.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I mean, the triumph of hope, the way he put together a coalition of hope. I think hope is so underrated.
Yeah.
So underrated.
Beautiful.
And I'm not making a political point here at all. Just the narrative he put together around hope, I thought was really incredible. And it was the first, but yeah, it came to me.
Thank you. Before we close out, one thing that I'm adding to the show is the Kind Leadership Challenge. To my audience out there, you've heard about the BUILD model. Tim walked us through it. I want to challenge you to go out on, once we publish this episode, in LinkedIn, #KindLeaderChallenge, and put any action that you've taken as part of the BUILD model, right? Anything that you've done, just share it out there. We would love to hear your feedback.
Yeah,
so
I would love to hear that as well. And it works really, really well with the kids. It works well with your parents-in-law. It works well with anyone.
Awesome. All right. So where can our guests find you? I'm sure you said LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, find me Tim Keogh. That's Keogh. I'm on LinkedIn. The company's called A Kind Life. Kind of Conversations is on Amazon, so you can find that there. Find me, hook up. Let's have a chat.
Awesome. And what message will you leave with the audience here? One final thought here.
Yeah, well, that's easy. Please, please, please be kind to each other at work. A, because it's the right thing. B, because it will radically improve your performance. But even more than that, be kind to yourself, because you cannot give what you have not got.
Beautiful. Tim, thank you for joining us and sharing your wisdom. And to audience, thank you for listening to the Kind Leader Podcast. Remember, be kind, bring value, rise together. Have an amazing day.